Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Daniela, as Laura said, and I am excited to share my insights on the evaluation of Sof+IA in light of data feminism principles. So first, what is Sof+IA? Sof+IA is a prototype chatbot designed to report and provide guidance on situations of digital gender violence in Chile. Its primary goal is to uphold women's right to freedom of expression on social media, particularly for those with a public voice, such as activists, academics, and political figures. So, as you can see, Sof+IA provide different information, such as digital self-care, cases evaluation, if your case is a digital gender violence, or you can report your case in the platform, in the chatbot. Sof+IA is available as such as first prototype in sofiachat.cl. In 2020, Ignacio and Klein published a book on data feminism, which explores how feminism interacts with data. And I think this code reveals very well the spirit of this approach. Data feminism is a way of thinking about data, both in its uses and its limitations. That is enriched by direct experience, commitment to action, and intersectional feminist truth. This year, they revisited these principles in light of AI, understanding these principles such as crucial as they highlight the necessity of incorporating a gender perspective into technology development. Together, these principles help to account for the unequal and democratic extractive and exclusionary forces at work in AI, research, development, and deployment, identify and mitigate predictable harms in advance of unsafe, discriminatory, or otherwise oppressive systems being released into the world, and third, inspire creative, joyful, and collective ways to work towards a more equitable, sustainable world in which all of us can thrive. So now, after developed Sof+IA chatbot, I think one of the most innovative things of it was the feminist methodology that we follow to develop Sof+IA. Do you always have budgets and time constraints in your project? So in a feminist project, I think it's fundamental and very important to evaluate after that how things can be different. So now I'm going to present the different data feminism has 7 different principles. So I'm going to examine Sof+IA in regarding that principle. First, examine the power. Sof+IA addresses a significant gap, the lack of official data on digital gender violence cases. Many existing data sets are owned by large companies, limiting access to information that affects marginalized groups like women. Sof+IA allows users to report digital gender violence cases and provides a visualization tool to present this data, enabling decision makers, academics, and journalists to use it effectively. So in the platform in sofiachat.cl, you can find this type of visualization, and this is anonymized data, and it is special for decision makers, scholars, or journalists to take data and make things like make, for example, news or reports or things with this data. The second principle is challenge power. Initially, our focus was solely on recording cases of digital gender violence. However, we soon realized the importance of prioritizing the needs of survivors. We couldn't just collect data without considering their experience and well-being. This led us to propose creating orientations and community support for survivors. That's why here I show all the different tools that we use with the survivors to understand the needs and desires in workshops and interviews or focus group that we did during the development of Sof+IA. As I said, we conduct interviews and workshops with survivors. So we try to act as mediators in this design process rather than authoritative figures. As Joy Bulaumwini said, I'm always confused with that last name. If you have a face, you have a place in the conversation. So that's why we try to develop Sof+IA with the community. The fourth principle is elevating emotion and embodiment. One of the most significant challenges was approaching survivors who had faced trauma. We ensured respectful interactions by allowing participants to share only what they were comfortable with. In our developed website, we aim to convey trust, security, and privacy through our design choices, which users found calming and reassuring. So here you can see some of the screenshots of the website and also the chat. I skipped the fifth principle only because of the time, but you can read everything in the publication. So the sixth principle is considering context. From the beginning, we aim to create AI that reflects our Latin American context, minimizing reliance and closed foreign services. However, budget and time constraints often force us to opt for cheaper and faster solutions. This raises crucial questions about our priorities in choosing the necessary infrastructure for our project. And finally, the last principle is making labor visible, and I put all the team members in this slide because in many projects, the contributions of those involved, particularly women, remain unrecognized. Initially, we faced difficulties finding collaborators, especially women in technology. Eventually, we assembled a team, but their existing commitments often limited their participation in key project milestones. It is vital to acknowledge the historically invisible labor in feminist projects to encourage broader participation. And as you can see, there are a lot of people behind Sof+IA. I'm one of the coordinators, but also we developed this project with a front developer, an internship, a UX writer, and also a legal expert. And finally, my conclusions of this evaluation. Despite our best efforts, projects like Sof+IA often fall short of fully realizing feminist practices due to biases and constraints. Evaluating these projects allow us to reflect on our approaches and consider what we could do different. Evaluation is fundamental stage in feminist AI project from my point of view. grounding concepts in reality and raising awareness of our creations. Evaluating this project allow us to reflect on our approaches and consider what we could do different. For me, feminism is an ongoing process of collective improvement. So that's why we need to evaluate our project, our feminist project, after you develop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniela. It was really interesting to hear how you worked through these questions as Sof+IA was developed, and of course, also your reflections after the fact. I really appreciate it. So I think now we're going to move into the Q&A portion of the talk. I have some discussion questions, but of course, everybody is welcome to jump in. So if you have anything you've been thinking about, please feel free to drop some questions in the chat or just unmute yourself. But I can start us off. Daniela, what guiding questions or ethical considerations directed your work throughout Sof+IA's development, and how did those questions evolve in response to challenges that you faced?
I think for me, the most important question or the most important objective of the project is to put the survivors in the center of our development. So the first challenge is how we can do this. What methodology we can use to put the survivors in the center. So we had to create that methodology. We had to take different approaches such as data feminism, but also design justice and also HCI feminism. So with that approaches, we create the methodology to do workshops or interviews with the survivors and to put their desires and their needs in the center to develop our chatbot. I think that's what guide our development in the whole project.
We have a question from Karen in the chat. Do you have any feedback from the survivors about Sof+IA?
Yes, we had a lot because first we did a first prototype and we evaluated this prototype. But I think it's not enough. We need more evaluation, and if you want to do more evaluation, and if you want to for example, to do a test or things more systematized, you need more budget and more time to do it. So I think we have to improve more in that cases.
All right, just kind of building off the theme of connection with survivors. How did you and the team navigate the tension between collecting data on digital gender violence for policy purposes while also prioritizing survivor well-being?
That's a very difficult question and a very good question, because our first main objective was to create something to report your digital gender violence cases. But then when we were developing this, we realized that we have to put the survivors in the center, and we have to put their desires and their needs there. And I think it's a very good question, because I think we develop the methodology and we create these workshops and this focus group to understand their needs and desire, but we didn't ask what about collecting data, or what about making public policies or things like that. So I think if I can do it again, I will ask the survivors what about those topics too.
Mm-hmm. And just, I guess, expanding a little bit on how Sof+IA was developed. Like, did you develop it like in collaboration with Survivor? Like what was their input throughout the design process, I suppose? Or did you like just get feedback on like the prototypes afterwards?
No, for example, we did, well, first we did interviews, like before we developed anything, we did some interviews with the survivors. So in that interviews, we understand with the survivors and also with stakeholders, such as police, ministries, or other actors. So yes, we did that, and after that, we did some workshops to co-create these things. So as I show in the presentation, we did, for example, a role playing with the survivors, and one was the chatbot, and other participant was a survivor. So they chat, and then we can see how they, for example, how they ask and how the people respond to that question. So we try to do some methodologies to create the chatbot.
Interesting. It's really interesting to hear like the process that goes into building something like this. Is not something I've ever really had hands-on experience doing myself. So kind of pivoting to another, I guess, design question. How did the like Latin American context shape how you design Sof+IA? Like what specific like sociocultural factors did you consider to make Sof+IA more effective specifically for Latin American users?
That's a very good question, because I mentioned a lot like the Latin American context in this presentation and in the article, and I was thinking about and I've never done anything in other part of the world, but I think the responses of the chatbot are very are shaped by the Chilean context. Because, for example, in Chile, the digital gender violence is not a typified. I don't know if this word exists in English, but like typified offense or murder. It's not like you don't have a law for that. So, for example, we put you can go to the police to do the report, but the police don't have so much to do in this case. So the answers of the chatbot are always shaped because of the Chilean context, like Chilean recommendations, and you can go to this place, or you can report in the police, but not in the on this type of police in other parts. So that's why I say that the treatments are only available in Chile. And yes, I think that is the main thing why Sof+IA is Chilean, because of the treatments that she gives to the survivors.
Okay. We also have a comment from Natalie who says, "What are good incentives? I think it's important to have access to this kind of data, especially if we as a society want to make improvements in gender equality and gender-based violence. My question is, what are the ways or means in which you want to continue improving the platform, if you're planning on doing that, and for Sof+IA to reach state actors that can use this information to improve public policy?" Thank you, Natalie, for that nice question.
Yes, really good questions. Yes, we are looking for funded to continue the development of Sof+IA. Our main objective now is that we are using GPT-4 Mini, And now we want to use something more an open source software. So we are looking for someone to develop that. And I think because chat GPT-4o is very good, because the functionality of Sof+IA is very good, but we don't want to depend in GPT-4o, because now we're paying, like, for example, I don't know, $10, but we don't know how much it's going to cost in 2 years or 3 years. So we don't want to depend in that type of technology. That's why we are looking for partners or founded to develop with an open source technology. That's our main objective for the next phase.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I have like one last question for you, Daniela, but once again, just want to open it up if anybody else has questions or just comments for Daniela. Wait a second. Feel free to drop them in the chat or also just unmute your mic. It's okay if not as well. All right, well, I'll ask my question and then if anybody else's comes in. So just like reflecting on this development process retrospectively, are there any elements of Sof+IA's development that you would approach differently now that you've reviewed it with these data feminism principles?
A lot of different things, but I think the most important is that if I have the money and the time, I would like to do more and more co-creation with the survivors, because it's difficult to do it, not only because of your time, because of the time of the survivors. Many of them are, I don't know, moms, or they have like jobs, formal jobs, or things like that. So it's difficult to create something with the community, but I think you have to, you have to, and you should, to do more workshops and more involve more the community. So it's always my main thing, that I would like to do it different now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think obviously it's easy to look at it in this like idealized way. It's like, okay, well, if I had the money, if I had the ability to do this based solely on like Latin American sourced AI, obviously it would be different. But based on real world constraints, it definitely becomes more difficult. We do have a question from Amina, who says, thank you, Daniela. I was wondering about promotion. How are you promoting Sof+IA? Are you relying more on word of mouth? And how would you envision survivors not in your networks becoming familiar with Sof+IA? It's a good question. Thank you, Amina.
Yes, a very good question. And now we are not promoting Sof+IA because we think that we need another round of iterative iterations. So, but I think we had a lot of interest in this prototype. For example, we tried to promote this project in different places, such as universities, and also with feminist organizations, because they need tools like this, and they need technology tools to receive more women that are suffering gender digital violence. And Yes, we are doing some seminars, some presentations in different places, but now we think that we need another iteration to I don't know, refine the chatbot.
So could you just like expand a little bit on like where Sof+IA is right now and like the next steps that you're planning to take?
Yes, now we have this chatbot online, and we are receiving responses, but it's not that we don't want to promote Sof+IA to report cases, because we think that we need to develop it better. Like, for example, the treatments, we want to put more treatments, like more guides or more help in the chatbot. So now it's very basic and very a light chatbot, but we want to do more things and to complex a little bit more the response of the chatbot. That's why we are looking for new founds, and we are looking for partners to develop more different treatments and different answers of the chatbot.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thank you again for your presentation. I really enjoyed it and the conversation. I'm dropping the link to Sofia's piece and revisions now and future in the chat if you want to check it out. That's like the written version of this presentation, as well as all the other incredible pieces that are in that publication. Oh, and yes, of course, the link to Sof+IA itself.
Yes.
It's really cool. You should check it out.